Hello, I'm Henry Pearson from the OECD, talking to you from our conference on AI, intelligent machines, smart policies. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Stuart Elliott, who is the author of Computers and the Future of Skill Demand, and also by Dirk van Dam, who is the head of our Skills Beyond School division at the OECD's Education and Skills Directorate. Today, we're going to be talking about computer advancement and how that is going to affect the workplace. We all know that technology is starting to invade our lives at every turn. It's happening right in front of our eyes. In fact, our smartphones now know even more about us than we do. But how is that going to affect the workplace? Will intelligent machines or computers start to take people's jobs because they simply do it more efficiently without the need to, say, eat food or sleep? Or do we not need to be worried? What kind of policy responses need to be put in place to deal with this issue? This is what we're going to be talking about with Stuart and Dirk. Thank you both for joining me. And if anybody has any questions during the broadcast, you can comment in the Facebook comment box below, and we will see if we have time for either Stuart or Dirk to answer that question. So Stuart, your study, Computers and the Future of Skill Demand, with a rather fetching robot on the front of it, talks about these workplace skills that computers might be able to do and therefore potentially take people's jobs. And you identified a few key skills that are done in the workplace commonly. I think my first question would then be, how many workplace tasks right now can be done by computers today?
So, Henry, you've asked the question that everyone wants to have the answer to, and I'm afraid that we're not quite at the point of being able to answer that question yet. But the purpose of the study was to begin to figure out how to get to the answer that everyone wants to know. And so we started off by picking 3 skills that are really important to work. Those are literacy, numeracy, and a type of problem solving that involves working with computers. And so for those skills, we wanted to understand, with current techniques in computer science, how close are we to being able to do the kinds of things that people can do. And so the answer from the initial work that we did was that about 87% of the workers in developed countries are actually using those skills only at a level that computers are close to being able to reproduce.
87%. Dirk, should people be worried about that? Should workers start to panic?
Yeah, I think workers should be worried about it. Not only workers, also employers, also governments. I think for workers it's very important to realize that the quality of the tasks that they are doing is becoming the important issue in the future. It's about mixing the cognitive foundation skills, where computers are really catching up very fast, with social emotional skills, with the kind of communication skills that really will make the difference. And also for employers, I think it's important to understand that you can automate a large part of what's being done in the workplace, but you also need to think about the quality of the workplace, or the quality of work, and how that humans can really guarantee the added value in terms of skills and in terms of quality to the production process.
Just before we get into the worries of workers and how much we should respond, I do want to ask Stuart first, what was the methodology of the study? How was it approached?
Well, for the work, we started from the work that the OECD does in understanding the skills that adults have. So we used the OECD's Survey of Adult Skills, which assesses these 3 skills and has a number of questions, specific tasks actually, that adults have to do when they take this test. And so we took those same questions and we took them and gave them to a group of computer scientists and said, all right, can the technology as it exists now, can it perform tasks like these? Can it answer these questions? And so they went through question by question and talked amongst themselves and sort of figured out what they thought a rough consensus would be in answering that. And then we graded the answers in the same way that we grade the answers for individual adults who take the test. and then use that to understand sort of what level computers are at compared to the level that different people in the population are.
And what skills were computers good at, better at than people, and what skills did people excel still above computers?
Well, as the computer scientists talked about the different questions and what each of them required, it was clear, for example, that questions that involved a lot of repetition, for example, finding the same kind of thing in a number of different places in a passage, that computers are really good at that, but that oftentimes people have trouble doing the same thing over and over again. The reverse of that, people are really good at applying common sense, just understanding that something makes sense in a particular situation, and computers don't have that common sense. But at the same time, it's actually important to recognize that computers and people actually are similar in a number of ways. So for the more difficult questions where you actually had to understand the exact meaning of the language, you really needed to know what the full sentences said. You couldn't just use keywords to find the important parts. For those questions, the computers had difficulty, but a lot of the people had difficulty too.
Right. And you mentioned the three skill areas that you looked at. Two of them were numeracy and literacy. Were the computers better at, say, numeracy than they were at literacy, or better at the third one was problem solving? Were they better at problem solving? Which of the three skills, regardless of humans, did they excel at most?
In this comparison, they were actually really fairly similar. People often think about computers being really good at arithmetic. So you might think that the numeracy skill area might have been the one that was easier for them. But in fact, in these questions on this test, a lot of what's involved is understanding what the problem is. It's a real life situation kind of task that someone needs to work through. And so all of the questions in all three areas really involved understanding language, understanding the nature of the problem that needed to be solved, and the computers had similar difficulties in working in all three of the areas. In a lot of cases on the ones with in the numeracy, the computer scientists would say, oh, well, there's a math piece, but that is not really what the issue is here. The issue is actually the reasoning involved for why you would want to use that piece of mathematics. And so it gets to the numerical reasoning, which is the heart of that.
Dirk, do the results of the study that some computers are beginning to replicate the skills of people at the same level, does that say anything about our education system as it stands?
Of course, yeah. I think in a lot of skills work at the OECD, we have started to realize the importance of good foundation skills. And so the number of adults with low levels of skills, literacy, numeracy, problem solving, in our countries is far too high. So we know that already from PIAC, from other surveys and studies. And this study really adds the dimension of technology and computers to this debate. So it reinforces the argument that we are making already for some time to governments and to societies, that it is really problematic if you have a society where 20-30% of the adult workforce don't have the basic foundation skills to function well in life and in the workplace. So now we have an additional argument, which is, look, the computers are coming as well. So you have to upgrade your population, and especially the younger populations who come out of the education system. Make sure that no one leaves the education system without good levels of basic foundation skills.
You mentioned low-skilled workers. Interestingly, there was a New Yorker article, in fact, earlier this week, about this topic that pointed out that the people who are going to suffer most at the hands of computers advancing is low-skilled workers. I'm wondering if, Stuart, you could comment on that.
I think that's certainly likely to be true. One of the things that it's important to keep in mind is there are a number of different types of skills. So this study that we're talking about today didn't look at, for example, the sorts of physical skills that we think about robots as being able to reproduce. And it's an open question how many of those skills are going to be able to be replaced by robots. So you can think about two scenarios. One where there are lots of low-skill jobs